Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm testing the Last of Us Part 2 on the ASUS TUF F16 with the RTX 5060 laptop GPU. All benchmarks were recorded on the Seattle Day 1 opening section, which is one of the heavier areas in the game because of the dense foliage, wider open spaces and a lot of streaming assets, so it really stresses the GPU. We'll be checking performance at 1080p and 1440p using native rendering, DLSS Quality, DLSS Balanced and Frame Gen. This should give you a realistic idea of what this laptop can actually deliver in a demanding open area scene. Alright, let's jump into the benchmarks. At 1080p very highs, the GPU is almost fully utilized, averaging around 55 and 65 FPS, and the temperature remains stable. The main thing to notice here is the VRAM usage, which is already around 7.5 GB. The CPU temperature sits around 80 to 85 degrees centigrade, and remember, for the ASUS TUF F16, the CPU will start to throttle at around 87 degrees because that's the turbo mode limit set on the Army Crate. So right now, those two factors, VRAM usage and CPU thermals, are the primary bottlenecks. There's still more performance available on the table because this GPU can hit around 99% usage in other games and pull around 110 to 112 watts when it is not being limited. So let's change the settings and see how it performs. Okay, so here we go. Dropping to high settings frees up a noticeable amount of GPU headroom without sacrificing much visual quality. There's an immediate boost in performance into the mid 70s, and the overall smoothness improves quite a bit. VRAM usage also drops slightly, and the game stays comfortably above 65 FPS for most of the scene. So guys, let's bump the resolution to 1440p and see what happens. At least at high it should perform decently well. At 1440p high, the game becomes much more GPU bound and GPU usage frequently hits 99%. Even so, the system has no trouble keeping up. FPS stays in the mid 50s most of the time, occasionally touching 60s, as you can see. CPU usage drops here, going from the mid 30s to the low 20s range. With a bit of fine tuning, I am confident you could get a stable 60 FPS at native 1440p. Also keep in mind that most of the game won't be this demanding on the GPU. There are plenty of indoors and tighter sections where the FPS will naturally climb. We are testing one of the heavier settings of the game, and this is a very realistic stress test for the game at 1440p. So it's time to try some DLSS at 1440p high settings, and we will be using the DLSS transformer model at quality settings first, and let's just apply that. Once we apply that, we'll see how the RTX 5060 performs. Now, using DLSS quality mode reduces the GPU's power draw slightly while giving a noticeable bump in smoothness. The FPS now sits comfortably at mid 70s, which is a solid improvement over the native 1440p, and the image quality is still good. One important thing to note is that the CPU behavior, temperatures are now frequently hitting 87 degrees and occasionally crossing it, and CPU usage has climbed back up into the mid 30s range. So while DLSS improves GPU performance, it shifts a bit more load onto the CPU. So we have to make a note of this. Okay, now after this we will also be trying the DLSS balance settings. Well, DLSS balance at 1440p in some games is really good, but in some games it is not that great. But hopefully Last of Us 2, the DLSS balance is still quite good, and now DLSS balance gives a much stronger uplift. The GPU isn't working as hard, sitting around 92% usage, while CPU usage climbs into the low 40s range. In terms of performance, the FPS ranges from mid 60s all the way up to 100 and past. The mid 60s dips are mainly when the camera turns towards dense foliage and open world areas, which are naturally heavier to render. Overall, the experience is very smooth, but you can see the preset putting more load on the CPU, so there's a bit of balance required to get optimal settings here. To wrap up this video, the ASUS TUF F16 with the RTX 5060 handles The Last of Us Part 2 really well at 1440p native and 1080p native, and with DLSS quality it boosts the frame rates quite high, and balance gives even more of a boost. Now this is what we are trying, frame generation, and here we see FPS go up to the 120s and the 130s, which is actually really fantastic. And remember, this is Seattle Day 1 area, one of the heavier sections in the game, and it takes quite a lot to render this section. That's it for the benchmark. Hope this helps you guys, and pick up the best settings that suits your machine and you should be fine with Last of Us. And also, to make a note, I still feel that frame generation looks quite well in this game. Thank you.